I am Lindsay. I have hypermobile Ehlers Danlos syndrome, along with many other conditions that Ehlers Danlos syndrome causes. But because May is Ehlers Danlos Awareness Month, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I thought maybe I'll share stories, a little bit of my story throughout the month. That's Hero, my service dog. I'm in my art room. It is a mess right now, so this is the only view you get until I organize it. So there you go. So my story of Ehlers Danlos started when I was about 11 months old. My mom had a normal pregnancy and birth with me, but my mom had a lot of illness and things like that growing up, along with, I know, my great-grandma, possibly. Don't quote me on that. But there was always illnesses that ran throughout my family, but nobody really understood why or what. It was just kind of known that it ran in the family. Okay, so I was about 11 months old, I believe, the first time I went to the hospital. My first memory in childhood, and I couldn't tell you how old I was, but I was young enough to be in a crib type setting. My first memory was waking up in a dark room with a bed that had bars all around it. I didn't know where I was, but I was aware that there was another child in the room with me, across the hall, and my mom was in the room with me. And that's all I remember, but that's the earliest memory I have. And then talking to my mom later, I was obviously in the hospital. So that started about 11 months old. I had a low to zero functioning immune system and had kidney infections and UTIs, severe UTIs constantly, and they couldn't figure out why. That, as it turns out, both of my kids growing up had the same problem. So fast forward till I was about 9. Now, throughout this time, I was back and forth from doctors, specialists. We went to Michigan, and all these different specialized hospitals and things like that. Tons of tests and biopsies, because I was just getting sicker and nobody knew why. At one point, they thought he might be too loud to talk through. Okay. At one point, they thought I had mono because I was sleeping so much. Turns out I have narcolepsy. I would have really sensitive skin and allergic reactions that didn't make any sense. Turned out I had mast cell activation syndrome. I would get really intolerant to heat, feel very sick in the heat, or after taking a warm bath. Turns out I had POTS. And I would get a lot of numbness and tingling and stuff in my hands and feet. Turns out I have neuropathy. So, and also raising my hand in school would be so painful for my shoulder, holding my arm up, using my hands, writing with a pencil, would hurt. I did occupational therapy at one point, from what I remember, and they built up pencils and stuff because my fingers were hurting when I was writing. Maybe it wasn't official occupational therapy. I think it was something through the school that they did. And that was the hypermobility. And I was always spraining ankles and wrists and always having joint injuries or pain that was unexplainable. And that was Ehlers Danlos. So the symptoms were always there, but Ehlers Danlos syndrome, even now, is so hard to get diagnosed. Both my kids have it. And the doctors acknowledge that they have it, but they're not comfortable diagnosing it unless it's an EDS specialist, which does not exist in Ohio currently. Well, one does, but they're no longer seeing patients from outside their city. I was seeing them, but not anymore. Now I have to travel outside of my state to see a specialist. Anyway, there might be one locally opening up, but we're having a hard time getting through to that one, so we'll see. It's very, very hard to find a doctor that'll diagnose people with EDS. I had to see an EDS specialist, and again, both my kids we're trying to get them into one to get a diagnosis for them. So yeah, about 9 years old, I was really sick. in and out of the hospital constantly. I was that whole period, but when I was 9, for some reason that sticks out in my mind the most. I also started a diary when I was 9. I think that's probably why. And would write in my diary when I was in the hospital and when I would get IVs and stuff. Being in the hospital was a regular part of my life. It got to a point where I felt safer in the hospital than I did at home. My immune system was so vulnerable as a child that yeah, the hospital was my safe place. When I was at home, we weren't allowed to have people inside the house. I had to, when I left the house, I had to wear a mask and gloves. I couldn't go to school anymore. I had to have a stay-at-home or a home teacher. But then eventually she had to stop coming because my immune system was so low. And I had a nurse that came to my house because my doctor was concerned I was spending too much time in the hospital. So they started nursing care at home. So that was my childhood with Ehlers Danlos syndrome. A lot happened between then, but that's long enough for now. But just as a reference point, I wasn't diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos syndrome until 2020. I am 43, 42, somewhere in there. I just had a birthday. I think I'm 40. Yeah, anyway, I'm 40 something. It's 2025 now, so I've only had a diagnosis for 5 years. And it's been going on since I was 11 months old. I've had it since I was born, but the symptoms started as a baby, an infant. And it's been my entire life looking for a diagnosis, and still my life is full of finding specialists that'll see me, finding specialists that'll know how to treat my very complicated body. Finding therapists, like physical therapy, that can treat hypermobility properly. I was in physical therapy. So I do understand that this isn't something I was ever trained how to treat. We were trained how to treat hypermobility, but not Ehlers Danlos. It's very complicated. It's a constant fight and a constant struggle to find the healthcare that you need to live the most functional life that you can. And that's all you can do. I have lost a lot of ability, mobility, stamina. My life now compared to what it was 7 years ago, when I was, 8 years ago, I was a single mom working full time as a physical therapist assistant, an extremely, extremely physical job on my feet constantly. And now cooking dinner is like running a marathon for my body. It is rough. I enjoy cooking dinner. I enjoy cleaning. I like feeling like I can be active, so I do them, but it is an enormous struggle. I don't feel like the same person that I was 8 years ago before my body really started going south. Yeah, it's a very different body that I live in now. It's quite insane. So I'm gonna try to keep doing this and raise awareness for Ehlers Danlos syndrome. If you have Ehlers Danlos syndrome, I encourage you to do the same. Share your story, share your experiences. Raise awareness this month, guys. We're in this together, okay? Zebra power. Let's dazzle today.